Good news, everyone. New Zealanders are saving like champions and house prices are shooting to the moon. Hang on. Reality check. Friend of the show, BNZ Chief Economist Mike Jones is back with his Property Pulse report, which paints a very different picture. Consumer confidence is hanging on by a thread, mortgage relief hasn't hit Kiwi wallets yet, and KiwiSaver balances are quietly being strangled in the background. So before you start browsing for that second property, pour a stiff drink.
Financial freedom faster. Financial freedom faster.
This is not just a YouTube channel, it's the fastest growing investment and property show in New Zealand. Subscribe now and get an unfair advantage in the property game. Mike, let's start with the mood out there. Are Kiwi households quietly freaking out, or is this just what happens when you check your KiwiSaver balance after a coffee?
Yeah, I thought I might be on the wrong podcast for a moment there at the start with all that optimism. But yeah, look, how's the mood? I think it's just a matter of kind of not feeling it. That seems to be the vibe I get from both talking to people, the anecdote. We do that from time to time, and looking at the numbers. So the mood for a while was, yeah, we're not really feeling it. This doesn't feel much like a recovery. And then we've seen some of the numbers roll in over the past few weeks. And I'm thinking particularly about the consumer sentiment, consumer confidence, what's the numbers, and they've actually gone back down, which was not what any of us were expecting, given we're supposed to be in an economic recovery. So, yeah, you sort of look at what might be ailing consumers, and there's a bit of a long list, and you touched on a few of them there.
The OCR is falling, but people still feel broke. What gives? Are mortgage rates just cosplaying as helpful?
Well, look, the thing that surprised me was, I mean, we're all talking about mortgage rates falling, and they are. They're about, as of today, about 200 points below the peak, if you look at the 1 and 2 year rates. So, in theory, people should be feeling better. There's some interesting numbers that the Reserve Bank reports, though, which is not the average carded or advertised mortgage rate. It's the rate that people are actually paying. And look, that rate is only, a handful of basis points below the high. So it hasn't come down very much at all in contrast to advertised rates. So what it tells me is people have been rolling off fixed rates, and rather than taking the much lower fixed rates on offer, they've been sort of floating or fixing for short terms, paying a bit more to postpone the benefit for later. And so there's kind of good news and bad news in all of this. The bad news is, well, no one's feeling it because the rate that we're actually paying as a nation hasn't come down a lot. But it is going to come. I mean, it's one of the few things you can actually sort of thump the table on and say, as an economist, that you know is going to happen, and that is we're going to get this big cash flow positive come through from people eventually rolling onto those lower rates. And we ran the numbers in the report you mentioned. It's about $2 billion. It's about 0.5% of GDP. It's quite big, and that's cash that's going to be coming into bank accounts and sort of helping pay the bills, I think, as we go through the next 6 months.
Let's talk KiwiSaver. Is it working in 2025, or are we all just donating money to Wall Street and praying for a rebound?
Well, it won't look that friendly if you've looked at it recently. It's one of the points we made in that report when you think about, well, what might be the impacts on you and I, the people out there in the economy, and how we're spending from the trade war. Well, the most obvious and immediate one will be the equity markets have fallen a long way. Most people have a decent amount of equity exposure in their KiwiSaver balances. And so if you check your balance, it's going to be lower than it was. And so that might be something that just impacts your spending behavior from that sort of what economists would term a wealth effect. It's sort of doesn't feel particularly wealthy at the moment. So that might be one thing where people are sort of looking and going, well, gee, how does this play out? My KiwiSaver balance is not what it was. Things don't seem to be improving anytime soon, so maybe I'll just sort of hunker down, pull my horns in for a bit. So that's one way, spending might be affected. Certainly an offset to that positive one I talked about, which is that cash flow coming through from lower mortgage rates, and we don't really know, when you net all that together, what the net might look like. But it's probably adds up to an environment where whatever your forecast for consumer spending was a week ago, you're probably lowering it.
Yeah. So, Mike, the Trump tariffs, trade war round 2, how exactly is this political tantrum going to end up punching Kiwi consumers in the face?
Yeah, well, the the analogy I've used at the moment, it's a bit like a sort of a bad dream in reverse, but you wake up and check the news, and that's when you get your nightmares, when you wake up rather than when you go to bed. And so it's not a nice period to negotiate in terms of the headlines. Pretty unsettling news out there. The reality is lots of people like me will be going on to podcasts saying it's uncertain and volatile, but no one really knows how it ends up. There's a lot of water to go under the bridge just yet, although we probably know that the impact is going to be negative, certainly for the global economy, probably for the New Zealand economy. If you're looking for silver linings, you'd say, well, maybe the New Zealand economy gets affected a little bit less than others, but there will still be a negative impact on growth, we think. And that's why the Reserve Bank is busy cutting interest rates.
BNZ says households are under pressure, but how bad is it really? Are we talking cut back on lattes, or is it sell the boat and a kid bad?
Well, it's interesting because we at BNZ, like a lot of the banks now, we look at our own spending information on BNZ cards, and there's kind of two messages from that. One is, yeah, we're definitely spending more than when we were last year, so we are spending. Those headlines are right. But if you look at the areas that we're spending, well, it's government charges, it's you're paying the bills, it's utilities, it's health, it's education, it's all the essentials. And the areas that we're not spending on are, holidays, travel, doing up the house, the discretionary stuff. So I think, yes, we're spending more, but part of that is because we're paying higher prices, and part of it's just those essential items going up in price, pulling spending power away from other stuff. I think the question is, when some of that mortgage cash comes through, does that change a little bit? People feel a bit better about their lot, start to splash out a bit more. A lot of it will depend on, what state the global economy is in as we go through. In 6 months' time, it could be a whole lot different to where it is now. So we'll have to wait and see on that front.
Why does business confidence keep rising while consumer confidence is in the fetal position under a pile of BNZ graphs?
I wouldn't be surprised if you actually see that big gap. So you got business confidence up here, you got consumer down there, kind of narrow a bit on both sides. So business confidence, look, we haven't really got a good read on business confidence. So the next read could be very interesting. I suspect strongly that confidence will come back a little bit from levels that were probably a bit over optimistic anyway. And consumer, well, yeah, it's hard to get too excited about it, but it's pretty unusual. The environment that we're in. You don't normally see those things so far apart. In fact, I put in the report, it's the widest gap you've ever seen between business and consumer confidence. So there's that real divergence out there. I think it will narrow one way or the other. We just don't know how. Do both fall, but business fall more? We'll have to wait and see.
For someone with a mortgage, KiwiSaver, and property in 2025, what's the smartest move they can make right now that doesn't involve panicking and moving to Perth?
Oh, look, I think for the moment it's just not panicking, and watching and waiting and worrying, as we like to say. When you look at what's coming across the screens, it can be pretty unsettling. But yeah, we really don't know how this all ends up. There will be some pretty nasty scenarios being tossed around at the moment. But I think for now it's sort of wait and see. Maybe keep a little bit of an extra buffer side. Who knows? We are in a global shock. We don't know how it's going to end up. So it is probably, maybe that hunkering down mentality for the moment is the right one.
Thanks for your insights today, Mike. Look forward to your next report, and do recommend that people have a look at your Eco Pulse report, and we'll link to it below.
Pleasure. Thanks, Andrew.
A final reminder, this is the fastest growing investment or property channel in New Zealand. Why? Because people who subscribe here are the ones making money while everyone else is still thinking about it. So hit that button before you get left in the dust.
Oh, 35.